fast lane, we had a really fast matchup between Maru and Bjorn. It was a 2-0 for Maru. If you guys did miss it, I'm sorry you joined late, but that's the way it works sometimes.
That's right. You blink, you might miss it with how quick that series was. Classic now will go off against Patience here, as you can see, getting second place in Challenge. Having a decent run through the GSL as well. Not his best of all time by any means, as he's of course got both titles, the SSL and GSL. But as it is, you know, Patience again, very creative PvP player, had the games to study for day one of the fast lane. His Classic got 2 opportunities since he placed so well in Challenge. So Patience had the opportunities to study the PvPs from yesterday, and he's a very crafty player himself. Looks to be in very high spirits as well.
What's going on in that booth? What are they feeding to these players over there? Both Bjorn and Patience are just all high spirits tonight.
All hype, but hopefully he can at least carry that momentum forward that Bjorn could not in the previous set. So
it's the happiest I've ever seen Patience, I think.
When you look at results career-wise, everyone would immediately say Classic is the favorite, right? He's got 2 titles in Korea. He's an IEM champion as well.
PvP is supposed to be great until he got bopped by Deer, who seems to be just getting better and better.
But, I mean, this definitely could go either way. Patience has had much better results in SSL. Here are maps Newkirk, Frost, and Abyssal, so definitely could see a longer, weirder one there on Frost. That one always gets a little bit messy for the PvP, and Newkirk definitely going to be an aggressive matchup. Could definitely see some Phoenix play and Oracles as well.
Yeah, wouldn't be surprised. And kind of funny that Patience, he prioritizes Frost #1. But either way, for map #1, guys, Newkirk Precinct, game #1, Classic versus Patience, the PvP. Fly better fly, Jin Air. Wolf, you're not joining me on those.
Oh, sorry, I gotta join in.
Down the bottom left, it's Classic.
I do fly better with Jin Air. Now down to the bottom right in blue. There's his opponent, Patience. Eventually. There he is. It's like raising his eyebrows at how long it took the camera up. He's like, I don't know. So already a difference in the builds. Classic will look to tight wall. Patience will allow the scout in the main base. So if you don't plan on hiding tech, if you're very willing to do a more economic build, or perhaps you just want to do an opening and use the mind game of showing your opponent what you're doing, this is the way to do it. The biggest edge, obviously, is going to be that your probe will get some extra mining when you do this, although if you run your probe around like that, not necessarily going to be the case, but does send it across now to Scout, will be the first to do so. Fortunately, he'll be met with a tight wall.
Well,
maybe not.
A little hole there.
Maybe not.
That's just if your opponent goes Adepts and you want to emergency stop it, you can always warp in a pylon and then cancel it later when the Adepts can't get up.
You could also tight wall it with a pylon to deny this probe scout. Doesn't look like he's interested though. Wants to go ahead and move down to take the natural, so he's going to allow the probe scout to the main base here. The other edge that you get from putting the gateways at the front, even if you don't tight wall, is to obviously get your units across the map faster. So it's only a slight distance advantage that you gain, but it is definitely there. So probe scout here will be warded away eventually.
Eventually. Okay, we got Classic going for the Adepts, Patience going for the Stalkers. Might actually be a response to that wall. We're spending a lot of time talking about this wall, but
yeah. I mean,
if you go Adepts to try to scout and your opponent is ready and denies it, then if you wanted Stalkers, those Adepts are kind of just sitting there.
Well, I kind of got ahead of myself there because the wall is not even really, it's not built to be a tight wall with the pylon placement. It could be used as a wall, as you said, to block the Adepts, which is where I was getting ahead of myself there, but
I mean, there is a lot of talk about walls and such with the newest president of the U.S., so it does fit the broadcast, I suppose.
Well, Classic paid for it with his hard-earned minerals.
At least they were his.
Stargates are both actually coming up here, so this isn't a shock considering the short air distance, but with the Mothership Core coming across here, it will be a scout for Classic. As the Adepts come in the main.
This can actually do a lot of damage if there's no overcharge. That Mothership Core was trying to fly back as fast as possible. You can see 3 probes, not bad this early on in the game. Classic going to gain a slight lead from that. The Mothership Core even coming in here, doing a little bit of tickle damage, but if you tickle hard enough, you can get some kills. There's another overcharge, and he was a little bit late on that recall. He's going to lose that Mothership Core. Ugh.
It's definitely not the cleanest game we have ever seen, but a significant amount of kills. You got the scout of the Stargate. Patience did delay the Nexus of Classic just slightly with a pylon, but eventually canceled it. He hasn't added his own Nexus and has continued to make a few additional Stalkers. They'll start the Nexus now, so it's not going to be a Pro League 2014 Phoenix Stalker all in.
Yeah.
I remember the opening day of Pro League, you and I commentated together. It was like your first StarCraft cast with me in Korea, and that was like what Cal did against Hero.
Yeah, I remember that.
Like no one else remembers that except the 2 of you. Like not even the Korean fans, not even Kanata who's commentating that day. I'm like, only 2 of us remember that. But yeah, that happened.
There's probably one guy in the chat who remembers.
I hope so.
One guy.
Well, this Mothership Core is going to go down too. It's just Mothership Core Death Day, man. See ya.
Yeah, Stalker's coming out. He was desperately trying to get 50 energy, and he did, but he was too late.
Killed in animation. Well, this has just kind of been a crazy early game, but we just take a step back and see that the Robo's coming up for Classic because he has the faster Nexus. He wants to make that transition, but Patience wants to go full Phoenix with the second Stargate.
Today we will learn whether or not it is advisable to go full Phoenix or not. Go half Phoenix or full Phoenix. It seems like this time going to start off with 2 Stargates. Immediately adds both gases, add the natural.
He should recall in time. Like, no way he fails this one. Okay. So, actually, can you check if he saw the second Stargate? I didn't see where it was positioned.
Yeah, it's right next to the other one. So.
Okay.
Could not see it. And with the tech that Classic did choose, he is behind 1 Phoenix, even before the second Stargate came out.
So when you have, so this is why he's pooling right now, because Patience knows it's very likely the Classic did not go double Stargate. He's going to wait for the extra Phoenix and then go together with it if he wants to try to just immediately win the Phoenix War, which can oftentimes give you a massive advantage. He doesn't decide to attack, however. Instead, temporarily, because of supply block, ceases Phoenix production. Looks like he just wants to hide this advantage for a little bit longer. The Observer will reveal this, though, as another scout comes around here with these Adepts. Might actually try to shade into the main to look for some probes, but this is going to give him additional information. Does get 2 already here. Cancels the shade and is just going to trade these. It'd be a terrible feeling to be the traded Adept, but doing it for your pro gamer. 5 probes in total.
And here is when Classic will see that second Stargate. So he knows what's going on, immediately starts Blink. Had the Twilight Council lined up with that.
I wonder if Patience saw that he was scouted by the Observer. I think he knows now because he is warping against on top of the Observer. The scary thing when you do the build that Patience has done is that if Classic identifies, which he just did, that there's no detection, he can go into DT. So he starts the Robo immediately. He's making his own transition. Has a larger Phoenix count, wants to bait out overcharges. Is going to find a heap of probes here in the main base.
Yeah, unfortunately, everything for Classic was out of position. The Mothership Core, the Stalkers, his own Phoenixes. But now Patience is kind of trapped.
Yeah, he is indeed, and the weakened Phoenixes from earlier are going to struggle here. Good micro, though, from Patience, actually pulling all the weakened Phoenixes to the back. Even before that fight started, the Phoenix that was eating the Stalker and overcharge damage was pulled to the back, so really good micro there by Patience. Classic does stave this off, finds himself in a slight probe deficit, but again, has the faster tech to Twilight. And we are going to see charge tech coming out here from Patience, so likely we'll see the Templar Archives come up to match it, to allow that extra gas to fill in some Archons with his Zealot Immortal push. Let's see how he plays this out. He's got the +1 on the way too.
I'm very curious about this transition from Classic, the second Stargate this fast. Just, I guess he feels like he won the trade. He's evened up the Phoenix count, and if he can take Patience by surprise, because Patience isn't going to continue making Phoenixes, then perhaps Classic can swing by, do enough economic damage himself, or maybe even just use it in the fight if you get enough Phoenixes.
Yeah, I mean, even a fake Immortal here, just to try to stave that attack off. I'm a little bit surprised by that, too. If he pulls it up and hides it, as you were kind of mentioning, too, like, he could maybe shock Classic, or sorry, shock Patience and come back. There's a player back in the old days that used to do this with Phoenixes in this matchup called Choya, and he would do it a lot, hide a second Stargate, sometimes hide 2 more Stargates, and in the late game against someone who went Phoenixes even, and then just suddenly show up to a base with 10 Phoenixes when people didn't scout. Back then you didn't have hallucination scouts and things like that, so it's harder to figure out moves like that. So he's going to come over here with these Phoenixes and these Stalkers on the ground. He has Blink. There's only 1 Immortal here. The rest were fake. Comes in the main base, finds the Mothership Core, so no more overcharges going to go down at the 3rd base. It was a good priority target for him to grab early on. Wants to look to engage on these Phoenixes. Actually, the Stalkers somewhat out of position here for Patience, and now these Stalkers for Classic do get a little bit of damage done. They had free reign for a moment.
He's poking on in with these Phoenixes and being very brave with them. I do like that. When you're making 2 at a time and you have 3 bases here in a sec, you can make so many Phoenixes. You shouldn't be scared of trading them out. And at the same time, even just that small group of Stalkers, he's not going for a big attack, but he's always poking, always threatening. And
he's just so much more mobile than Patience is. Yeah. He's forcing units to go into the main base as he's just chipping away. And like you said, it's not doing immediate damage, but it forces the reaction. However, Patience does have his own Blink coming up that's going to make the defense a lot easier. He has the upgrade lead. Forge just now being added for Classic as +2 passes the halfway mark on completion. Going to hit this natural now with these Stalkers. Good micro here from Classic. Not using his Blink, just kind of walking it back there, forcing overcharges of Phoenixes over here. It feels like Classic is just getting massive value, not immediately, but over time. He's really done a number on Patience.
Yeah, I mean, take a look at the probe count right now. 11 ahead, 55 to 44 rather for Classic. His army is smaller, and Patience's army is definitely a bit scarier with the amount of Immortals he has in the mix, and even adding in some Archons before Classic. So if Patience ever gains a foothold in this game, he definitely can threaten the 3rd base of Classic. But for now, Classic, he's abusing that mobility, like you were saying, to try to get as much harassment damage as possible so he can scrape his way ahead. Yeah,
this is really kind of a, I don't want to call it a game of cat and mouse, but it's definitely Classic's trying to force something to work here. But if he doesn't actually find any real significant damage, the fact that he's behind in tech while committing all these resources to the 2nd Stargate, the extra Phoenixes, will definitely hurt him in the long run. Gonna grab a nice Immortal here, the probe also, so he will delay the 4th base. He has his own probe in position to make one, so these are ways he can get himself back in the game, but the tech is going to be something he's never really going to be ahead in. He's always going to have to catch up. Just how upgrades work. When you start in +1, or you're making +1 while he's making +3, there's just no way you can remedy that. Only time will. So we'll have to eventually catch up there, but we'll have the economic lead to hold on.
He's moving out on the map. I feel like he is trying to bait these units into a bad position and maybe then go for a fight, but he's got to be careful not to lose these Phoenixes. Looks like 1 goes down.
He only has 3 Immortals with this. The majority of the rest of his army is very melee-based. You know, the Archons are nearly melee units. The Zealots, of course, coming in. So if he had more Immortals or a larger Stalker force, perhaps he could try to go for like a Nexus snipe. Just continuing to harass with the Phoenixes, though. The ability to backstab with Phoenixes when the units are out of position is so powerful. Gonna look for the more direct approach here this time. Perhaps to look for an angle at the natural here. Down still 1 set of upgrades right now. Good position for Patience. If he can just maneuver his way up here to hit the 4, then that's exactly what he's going to do. This is actually a really nice move by Classic because the army of Patience is just less mobile and he can't track this army down, chase it, and punish it for this move. So Classic finds himself in an economic lead still, behind in upgrades, but ahead in money.
And it's particularly important for now because just now it looks like the main bases of both of these players is mining out. So Classic will be a full base ahead for quite a long period. The extra, you know, third base mining is really going to be nice, as it looks like he might transition into carriers or something out of that fleet beacon. Going to come in here and reduce as much of the mining that was left over in the main as possible.
Killed another probe with one charged zealot over there too, so further delays the fourth base of Patience. And with the fleet beacon coming up, I mean, Classic, even though he's behind in ground upgrades and he will be a set behind for a significant period of time, he can immediately start the +3. He's going to have a mothership. He's going to eventually have the Tempest tech that he's going to want to have in the late game. And I mean, this is a situation now where Patience doesn't have an army to kill Classic. He doesn't have an army to threaten the fourth base, and Classic will just eventually catch up. And there's not anything that Patience can do to stop the he's even with his +3 attack. Like, he can't do like, aha, I'm +3, you're +2, so I can win the fight and win the game. He can't force a fight like that. So this game is going Supreme late game no matter what. And you can win it, obviously, when you get into PvP. When you win the max out fight, you crush it, you just win the game. But Classic has fought his way back in with some really good decision making. He's been the initiator in this game from start to finish in terms of Phoenix harassment, poking, looking to try to knock down that third base, denying the probe, stopping that fourth base from going up. And because he's been taking the initiative, he's been rewarded.
And I want to say, you know, Patience, he's ahead in army supply right now, but it doesn't really tell the full story. He's ahead 2 Immortals, but mostly he's ahead in about 12 Zealots. So with this many Archons on the field, they're not going to make too much of a difference. Definitely your front line is going to be stronger, and the Archons of your opponent won't be attacking your Archons. But
this is an opportunity. Remember, he does have the +3 advantage. This is a fight. I was saying it's going to be tougher to force a fight. This is the fight he was looking for. No detection, though, it looks like. Trying to fight this. Oh, Archon's on move command there for a second. He tried to target the mothership, and that's going to be a lot of wasted DPS. Still has the edge, though, in terms of upgrades. But look at this. So many Immortals coming out for Classic.
The double time warp, too. What a play. GG Classic. Able to take that one out. The sneak mothership is what won him that one in the end, and all of that harassment that he did throughout that game. So Classic looks like he's in better shape in PvP tonight.
Definitely some questionable decisions by Patience. You know, it's really tough to secure a fourth base in that situation where you're constantly being harassed, but he made his fourth base so late. And when the Zealots were harassing, when he was picking off the probe with the Phoenixes, he never escorted the probe. He was just like, okay, got it, I'll send another one over. It's like, no, you need to really escort that probe. You need to get in there, make sure he makes that fourth base. You've got the upgrade advantage, but if he gets a fifth, which Classic had there at the end of that fight, then you feel like you're forced to all in, which is what we saw there. He didn't retreat, he couldn't, got time warped, targeted the mothership with his Archons, lost so much DPS. It was dirty.
That's how Classic likes it. He likes to get down and dirty. And we're going on to Frost now. So a much bigger map, 4-player map. And this was Patience's first choice. So will this be the same result as we saw in series number 1? Or is Classic just going to take an early 2-0 victory? Let's jump into game number 2 right now. Here we go, game number 2 on Frost. Up in the top left, it's Classic, winning game number 1.
And his opponent to the bottom right, in blue, it is Patience. We have Frost, which was Patience's top map choice, and then Abyssal Reef. So once again, larger maps going into this one. Newkirk was the starting map for the previous set. Started it on our second best of 3 as well. And it's a large map, but it's got a short rush distance by ground. Still, we saw third bases, fourth base attempt by Patience, 4th and 5th from Classic, end up happening on that map. So as we go into this matchup, once again, the PvP on this large map now at cross spawns. You have to think that based on the play styles of these two players right now, we could see yet again a very long map. Question is, will we see the Phoenixes again? So we see fast scouts coming out from both players. So when they identify that it is cross spawns, we may see Phoenixes, and it could just be the faster Robo and kind of that Cold War-esque arms race of stockpiling minerals. to then get that maxed out army and try to bully your opponent with it. I think the timing of the Forge upgrades is going to be significant in this game as well. It was something that Patience had an edge on but couldn't capitalize on.
And both these players going for a scout. We'll find out that they are at cross spawns early enough. Just coming in here. By the way, there's a crazy amount of people in the fans, in the audience here that are really cheering for the Korean casters, because I think we've mentioned this before, but the Korean Challenge broadcast is the most popular out of the three. And I feel like a bunch of their fans, specifically the casters from SSL Challenge on the Korean side, they have a ton of fans, and a bunch of them came over. One guy in the crowd said, "I love you," to the main guy in the middle. He's a pretty funny guy.
His name's Ikkun, and he used to cast GSL Kodae, and he also did a lot of work with like a Home Plus shopping channel out here, so a lot of like TV experience. But fun fact about him is actually before becoming a StarCraft 2 commentator, he was actually a comedian. So he's definitely been around. He's seen a lot, and he's a very funny guy. So his comedy background, I think, definitely helping him on the more relaxed challenge broadcast. That's a Patience probe, isn't it? Was he gonna like make a pylon in the main, like GSL Open Season 1 style? And
yes, please.
Just 4-gate him.
3 and 4-gate. Just throw down like 4 pylons.
I think it was Huck versus Sokka or Huck versus Sase back at MLG, or this just like kept happening. Both people putting pylons in each other's mains. Wings of Liberty at the beginning, man. It was great. 4-gate for life.
It was fun. It was fast-paced. I feel like the game is in a much better spot now, though.
It was definitely exciting back then. The meta was very defined. Just comes over here, scouts to see if there's any tech being put down. Luckily for Classic, it didn't add anything yet, just adding a faster Nexus.
It still gives him a lot of information, though. You know, seeing no tech basically means, okay, I know you have an expansion. I know you're probably making 2 sentries. It's a very risky build, or rather, not risky for these positions, but that's why he's doing it. It's kind of like an economically greedy build. He puts down the Nexus even before the 2 sentries, so getting that down, Patience will be slightly behind.
It's a cool build in terms of economy because the sentry costs 5,100 in terms of gas and minerals. So when you put the Nexus down, you don't have that many minerals right away, but you do quickly build up the 100 with your full saturation in the main to grab those 2 sentries. The timing works out really nice. You can use them to defend, drop force fields. Very cool style.
Or sentry drop.
Or sentry drop. Probably pretty unlikely in this case, but since it's actually a robo coming out for Patience instead of Classic. The old sentry drop tactic, man, PvZ. Sometimes in PvT on certain maps was definitely it's a fun one. You know, StarCraft definitely went through eras of being dominated by all-ins, with the exception of Zerg, really, which was mostly a macro-based race. But I feel like we're in an era of pretty macro-based play overall right now. You know, there are some all-ins, and you sometimes see a proxy like Reaper or something like that, but you know, it's very much a getting it ahead through harassment and small advantages rather than swinging the hammer early. Remember pulling the boys and things like that?
Yeah.
Not as common anymore.
We got a small attack here by Patience. It's 4 Stalkers and 4 Stalkers, but Patience has 2 Adepts, whereas Classic has 2 Sentries. Just commits to the harassment here with the 2 Adepts. Will not get any more damage, runs back home with this Stalkers.
Fast Forge coming up here for Classic. This time he will lead the upgrades as Patience looks for a greedy 3rd base. So it's very unlikely to be scouted.
Does have that hallucination, but
he was like, all right, just force out the overcharge, not too significant in any way, as obviously the Mothership Core is nearly at full energy, will be before any sort of significant skirmish. War Prism coming out here, Stalkers coming across the map. Patience looks to really find an aggressive attack here, but Classic is going to have that first Immortal in just a moment. The Observer snipe here is nice, but it also tells him something that's actually quite terrifying. Is okay, he's got an Immortal out. But what he wants to do with this is he wanted to get perhaps a good trade, but also threaten Classic, force him to be on the defensive, and prevent him from taking a 3rd base while he gets his own. Seeing that Observer come out, it's like, okay, he's got Immortals for sure. Not really going to be able to poke a lot, but let's go check and see if he made a 3rd. And that's what he's doing with Stalkers. Okay, no 3rd base. So I have the edge and start to forge as soon as he realizes this. He's still behind in upgrade spot. we'll have that third base up, faster probes, and even, no one really talks about this, but the extra chrono boost, which is quite significant as well.
It's quite nice, continuous here in Legacy of the Void. Classic gonna put down his third base finally, just how as Patience finishes his. You can see that Patience, after he scouted there, the third base, he just went right home with all the stalkers. He's really just trying to get some harassment damage with the Warp Prism done. Just start the charge, doesn't have that just yet, but definitely can drop down some adepts perhaps.
The Prism is going to be used as a backstep threatening tactic. Looks like he's actually going to force it here. Very usually in situations like this, when you have the eco advantage, you just use this as, well, he wants to force out the overcharge, but you use this as like a threatening tool. Whenever he tries to move across the map, you see it on the watchtower, for example, then you warp in adepts in the main base or zealots back in the day, and then the pro's like, oh, I gotta turn around, and you hold on to your third base. He shows this early, but it survives. So that's pretty good. Pretty solid.
The funniest drop I've seen in a while. This comes in, one adept pokes 3 of the probes and gets out. As you said.
I don't think he even lost hull damage on that Prism either, just the shields, yep. Adept seems pretty healthy too.
Patience getting a pretty big lead in the supply right now. He's ahead on workers and even on army at this point. Let me take a look at what the army sizes are looking like. Looks like no zealots for Classic. He's just got 3 immortals and 10 stalkers, whereas Patience has 5 sentries and 7 zealots. So that's where the majority of his army supply comes in.
Classic does have the faster +2, but that's you know, that's only temporary. Obviously about half an upgrade lead ahead. So we see the move out here for Patience coming across the map now to poke yet again. Not looking for, this is exactly what he did with the stalkers just later on in the game. He's going to make a 4th base, do a show of force. I think is really the best way to describe this, and say, get ready to defend, or I could kill you or threaten your third base here, maybe kill some probes. So it forces warp-ins to be had here for Classic, forces him to use resources to defend while being unaware of the 4th base and not have anything to harass it. These stalkers, unfortunately, since they got greedy in terms of harassment, not going to be in position to scout or identify that Classic is finding himself yet again behind an economy. And in fact, these stalkers will be caught. You can buy some time with these, but they will eventually get taken out. Look at this, even leaving some on the low ground to prevent the blink away.
You see Classic moves out at the same time because he knows the majority of Patience's stalkers are out of position. So he'll at least take the watchtower. He's gaining, you know, a small advantage in the map control, even if that does mean the sacrifice of 4 stalkers.
I think he realizes too, though, with this, that if he moves out and tries to be aggressive, that Warp Prism is still out there.
Not just 1, but 2.
Yeah. See Classic with the Stargate. I think this is just going to be for a fleet beacon to eventually get that mothership tech, which Patience struggled to deal with in the previous set. Well, as I say that he adds a Phoenix, it may just be 1 Phoenix to prevent Warp Prisms, and then eventually we'll make that fleet beacon. There it is. So I think that's what he's doing here. Triple Chrono going down over here. Those Robos not in use currently, but I'm sure he'll find some benefit from those Chronos soon. Patience similarly adds his own Stargate, just 1 step behind in terms of tech, but 1 step ahead, 1 big step ahead in economy, and that's given him the larger army, which is what he's using now to try to bully Classic. So this game is, in a lot of ways, very similar to the previous one, just kind of reversed with the players. This time, Patience has the faster 4th base, but is behind slightly in upgrades.
We're going to come in here to the 3rd base, put on some pressure. He's coming from 2 sides. We'll see how Classic wants to deal with this. Looks like he's sending his entire army over to the 4th base. Just trying to use chargelets over there, but a big warp in the main at the same time. Patience really pulling Classic apart here.
Okay, Photon Cannon getting targeted down in the main base. These Zealots actually doing a number here too. Force Field's unfortunately not very useful against Archons. The Time Warp, though, will help him retreat as the Zealots continue to find value here. So weird that Phoenix is lifting up the single one there. This attack over here is finally going to get shut down. So this is a pretty good trade for Patience with all the probes he's killed in the main base. He's losing some units on the defense here, or sorry, on the retreat, but no one's dealt with this Prism. The Phoenixes have not found it, so no mining now at the 4th base.
Where are those Zealots going? Where are you going? Get back there and do your job. Attack those probes at the fourth base. I think he must have put them on the same hotkey accidentally because they're running all the way back to his base.
Either that or he's scared he's going to die to this push and he just wants to have everything he can. Got the better position in terms of high ground here, though, does Patience. Guardian Shield going to be significant, but here come the Zealots for the flank. This may have been a blessing in disguise here for Patience if it was accidental. As he gets the flank off here, now he's got the Immortal lead. And it looks like we may just go to a game 3 here.
Looks like it. Too many Immortals here for Patience. Those Phoenix is just a joke in the sky right now. And the game isn't going to end right now. And Classic does save his fourth base. But again, the Warp Prism's still here. It looks like this time those Zealots will do some economic harass. And Classic way far behind in terms of economy and army right now.
Yeah, he has the upgrade lead for about, what, 10 more seconds? Than that, he's not going to even have that advantage anymore.
He's down 8 Immortals.
That's a problem.
That's really the biggest issue here.
So what Patience is going to do now is to dot his I's and cross his T's and then look for a maxed out attack where he knows he's going to have that first.
Yeah, and I mean, there's not much that Classic is doing to catch up when it comes to the Immortal count. You can see he's just making Archons and Phoenixes. So I think the play is lift up all your opponent's Immortals and go in for the attack and hope that you can kill everything then, because I guess building that many Immortals in this short of time with just robotics, one robotics facility against 3 of Patience, who's building 3 Immortals at a time, is going to be a very hard feat.
Yeah, that's definitely the way to go about this. Also, what he could try to do, which we've seen a few times in situations like this in PvP, is to make a Dark Shrine and look for Observer Snipes, and then, or even just look for Observer Snipes again with a Mothership here. There's basically the same functionality.
There's only one Observer here for Patience, and as our Observer, our real one, did show, it's over at the fourth base. So
this is, I mean, this is definitely going to be quite significant, but he's getting outmaneuvered here again now by the Zealots. But as we reach max out versus max out, even though he had a huge edge, if Patience loses this one fight, he could lose the entire game from it.
That was close with that Mothership Core. He is getting a lot of probe kills once again, but as you mentioned before, I mean, we're getting really late in this game now, 14 minutes in.
Prism's going to get shut down. That's no more harassment.
Yeah. Classic's holding on somehow, some way. He's down 11 Immortals right now, but way behind when it comes to Zealots specifically, 23-4.
3 Robos for Patience. I just wanted to check that because suddenly 3 more Observers popped out. We went from 1 to 4 immediately, so he's like, oh, okay, I'm going to have the detection this time. Starts a 5th base. Classic is going for the Hail Mary attack, even on upgrades. Remember, max out versus max out, Bros versus Bros, despite everything else that's happened, if he wins the one fight, even with inferior tech, can certainly just win the game off of it. It's a massive amount of Zealots. The Archons are going to make this a challenge to fight with. He may just look for the recall. Time Warp is planted instead. Unfortunately, unable to find the fight he was looking for. The problem is that 14 Immortals to 4, 28 Zealots to 9, the Immortal advantage is way more significant. So Barrier is a pretty good ability. Just makes the Immortals nearly immortal, if you will, in the fight. So also denies the 5th base with those Zealots. So we're even on economy, and I don't want to say Classic has fought himself into a lead here, but he's definitely fighting back, and he has control in terms of positioning. Look at this, brings the army over with at the 4th base. Now he's going to hit this 3rd, and he can recall away when the army comes over. Will he get the target here?
Big tag by Patience. He can see this entire army, and it looks like Classic is still fighting. Patience on the ramp, not the best positions. Those Immortals in the back are not fighting.
Okay, here come some of the lips here, but there's so many Archons on the side of Patience here. The concave advantage for Classic, though, and with these Immortal lifts, perhaps he is going to find his way in a win here in this fight. The edge here with the lifts, but unfortunately, it's not going to be enough. Look at this, more and more Zealots come in. The flank is real. Classic taking a pretty cool fight here, having that concave, but perhaps wishes he recalled now as he's forced back.
I think you recall right after you run out of lifts, right? I mean, once the Immortals fall out of the sky, you're winning the fight up until that moment exactly. And I think you have to fight when you have the advantage and the opposite when you don't. And I think he kind of messed that up there, as you were saying. So, Classic, it looked like he was fighting his way back. We got carriers on the way now, though, for Patience, as Classic just committing to mass Archons.
Patience with the air upgrade, as well as, of course, Graviton Catapult coming out now. The +1's going to be out for these carriers. Classic has 70 probes, which is part of the reason why the supply looks so close. So he has a huge economy, and he's adding a ton of robos right now. He's going to try to be like, now I can catch up in Immortals. But the problem is those Immortals aren't going to be very useful against the carriers that are coming out now. These spotting oracles being added as well.
You gotta admire Classic's tenacity.
Oh, absolutely.
In the series. I mean, he's sticking in this one for a little bit too long. Patience also struggling to end the game after, you know, I feel like he could have won that fight earlier, even if he didn't have the Zealots that came back and defended. I feel like he could have just shut down the 4th base and really gotten far ahead from there. But either way, the past is the past.
So, I mean, the situation we're in here obviously is Classic just trying to scramble to max out now and use his better economy, his probe count, his hidden extra base as well to the top right. I mean, I think this is the best way to describe it, as a scramble. He's just trying to do everything he can to catch up. He's like, oh, I can't believe I lost that fight and Patience didn't attack me and I have the economic lead and I'm going to harass him a little bit to keep him back. Now the attack is coming. Now the attack is hitting. He's still very behind in army supply. Wants to buy a little bit more time here. Wanted to fight with the vision advantage on the Watchtower. That was not going to happen. Now needs to turn around here. He's cut off from his base to the top right, so he's just simply going to lose it.
He's going for it, I think. No. I thought he was just going to say, okay, you go for my 5th base, I'm going to go across the map. Well, he hesitated for a bit, now he's going. So he's going to give up the space to the top right.
Okay, it's time to make a Dark Shrine if you're going to do what Classic is going to do right now. Patience actually finds himself again only with 1 Observer. Does have the 3 robos that can quickly produce them, but recalls home here. That's one advantage he has. He's going to look for the snipe on this base, and Patience is a little bit slow on the punish. Oh, he's going to try to trade some units here, then go for the recall. Needs to get the Nexus, though. You would have to think. Knocks it down, and now could just recall home. Needs to make sure he does that, though. Doesn't want to leave a single Zealot behind with this situation. Gets home.
Nice move.
What a great game this is actually turning out to be.
We see Patience rather now down to 29 workers and only 1 mining base. The much stronger army, of course, but Classic really making this interesting in this one. Patience struggling to end the game at cross spawns on Frost.
I feel like that's the really big aspect of this we haven't really been spending too much time talking about, is actually the fact that because they're at cross spawns and because there's mobile armies with recalls available with motherships, that it's very difficult for Patience to punish. You would feel like perhaps he would have earlier, especially after that huge fight that he won when the Immortals dropped out of the sky. He crushed Classic's army. It was made of paper after that. And that was, I think, his moment to end the game. Not that to say he's never going to be able to, but it feels like Classic is just outplaying him and punishing him for being so passive.
Yeah, exactly. He's doing everything right with his position. You know, he's reading his position a little bit better, and he's slowly coming back. I mean, we're getting to a point now where Classic is almost in the lead. In terms of his army. Obviously, the 2 carriers are going to be hard to deal with, and Classic's army does have army supply in 8 Phoenixes, which are really just for lifts, and I suppose a little bit for dealing with these annoying carriers. But
I mean, the hidden bases too, he got away with one of them for long enough for it to pay for itself. Then when Patience committed all the way to killing it, he traded a base while behind. And now, even though that Zealot saw the entire probe transfer to the bottom left, he's not doing anything about it. Classic pulled his probes away. He knows that he was scouted. And even still, Patience was the one who didn't realize that there were probes being transferred over there. He's not punishing that base. So Classic's going to get further ahead with this extra base. I mean, I like you said, we're almost at the point where Classic's ahead. I think we might be passing it right now because Patience still hasn't identified the base.
It's really close.
Okay, now he sees it with the Zealot.
He sees it, but what is he going to do? I mean, that is all the way down on the bottom left. He'll have to bring a significant portion of his army down there, of very expensive units that he needs in the big fight. to take that out if he wants to take it out.
This is the problem because it's a base for a base if things continue as they are now. So if Patience goes over to kill that base, first of all, it's already paid for itself now in mining by the time he would have gotten there. Then he loses his fifth base. And the cycle continues, and Classic always finds himself one step ahead if that kind of trade continues to happen. It's actually already going to find a way to find some harassment with these Zealots. Has a very decent position here as we just keep seeing the reveals go off. One thing that we didn't talk about is that Patience has the +1 plasma shield advantage that's going to be really important with the Archons.
He also has bigger army supply because he has less probes. So he's officially, well, he's almost maxed out here. And he will have the bigger army than Classic because Classic just has too many probes. And
ooh, this is a risky position, though. Down goes that Prism. No reinforcements here. He's going to use the Time Warp to buy time, but he does knock this base off the map. Unfortunately, with the base of the bottom left and the other base for Patience finding out.
A bunch of those units didn't get recalled. He can just take them out for free.
Yeah, that's huge. Nice catch here. That's expensive. That's a lot of lost gas in the Archons. Classic can remake that base for free, too.
He's chasing the Archons. He can't actually kill him.
Okay, but this is going to actually give an opportunity for Patience to get in a better position. Not sure what's going on here.
Okay. Classic saying, here, take my Phoenixes. I didn't want them anyway.
So risky.
Let's make this fight fair.
So risky to go down a ramp like that, too. It's funny, too.
Classic wants to fight.
Okay, he's going to try to go for this. I'm not sure this is the moment. He does have a Zealot advantage, but in terms of Archons, remember that Plasma Shield is really significant. Time Warp goes off here. It's a little bit late. The army size here definitely much better for Patience, as you said. His attack feels wholly unnecessary. Will he be able to win this fight? The answer is no for Classic.
Yeah, those Immortals on the ground, just too much. And a better position here for Patience now, just barely eking out that fight. GG, Patience takes us to game 3.
For a second, I thought those Immortals were unscouted there because they didn't die for a second. I was like, we just not have an observer. But no, he cleans it up. I felt like that attack was pretty suicidal from Classic, wholly unnecessary. There are just certain things that you can't know when you're a player in this moment, like that his opponent's army size was better because of the lack of probes. His max was stronger, Patience's was, so that's something that Classic can't really identify unless he flies like hallucination scouts around and checks the probe count. Something he could have maybe assumed but couldn't know for sure. Taking a fight there in that position as well, where the defender always has an advantage. The extra damage from the carriers, the better plasma shield upgrades, these tiny small edges that Classic either chose to ignore or didn't realize are why he ended up losing the fight and lost it completely, didn't bail out in the middle. Yeah. When you go down to, there's a difference between going 20 army supply, 30 army supply and retreating and going down to 2 and GGing out. So he committed fully, and that's all she wrote for game number 2.
So guys, game number 3 on Abyssal Reach starting right now. Here we are on Abyssal Reef. Up in the top left, it is the Red Protoss Classic.
There's that camera shot. Down to the bottom right in blue, it is Patience. You know, it must feel bad, though, for Patience, who had that really rough game 1. In game 2, despite what felt like endless advantages, unfortunately, he still couldn't close the game out until the very end, where Classic kind of chose to close it out himself, you could argue. But if I'm Classic right now, it's frustrating that I lost that fight. It's frustrating that, you know, I fought back so hard. I took the better map control. I had the better initiative, which is always the case in game number 1 on Newkirk as well. And I lost the fight. But what I also think is he beat me, he destroyed my entire army, he crushed it, and still, with only a slight economic lead, I was able to outmaneuver him, control the map, and basically almost win the game with one hand tied behind my back. It's got to feel pretty good, despite that loss there at the end, knowing just how much he outplayed Patience in the late game on that huge map. This map, not as large, but still one of our larger 2-player maps.
Yeah, and as I always mention, it's very defensive, right? You get your natural, there's really no breaking that. You get up to 3 bases really easily. And in PvP, if you really ever get to that position, it's pretty rare. I think only maybe 20 to 30% of the games will end in just one fight where someone got a big lead early on and then just ends the game at the third base or something. So I think we're in for another long one. That's what I would predict coming into this one.
I would say so as well, based on the play styles of these two players. Really interested to see how it's going to match up against the Terrans once this third game concludes. So variation here, Stalkers versus Adepts. Stalkers once again for Patience, the Adepts coming out for Classic. Adepts can do a lot when there's no tight wall off on a two-player map like this, and you've already scouted that from your opponent. So I like this choice.
I like the Adepts on this map too. I mean, good for that mobility, getting across the map a little bit quicker, but Patience liking that more defensive style.
We'll see if Classic decides, yeah, he's going to add the two Stalkers here. We may just see him drop a Nexus and then two Sentries. Might even go to the 4-Stalker set like we saw in the previous game. Coming across here, Stalkers will meet Adepts in the middle of the map. Whoop. That was kind of funny.
Slips on by.
No pylon jiving. Doesn't even need Adepts to get the full scout. Now he's got Stalkers. Interesting position here for these Adepts by Classic. Looks like he was more focused on...
Sneaks him in so you can get a closer shade. Try to get by the Stalkers. Will he commit? The answer is no. He really wanted to kill that probe that was out there trying to build the Nexus, but it didn't work out. He's going to lose this Adept in the trade.
Oh, wants to kill it with a shade, gets the first shot, gets the second, and gets it in the main base.
Oh, will he get another one?
Yes, he does, and forces an overcharge.
Oh boy.
Small edges, small advantages, baby steps.
I mean, look at the Nexus of Classic. It's already halfway done. It's pretty nice, but still 4 Stalkers out on the map for Patience. He can try to pressure, you know, force out an overcharge, do a little bit of that, but Classic, I feel like he's outmaneuvering Patience here so far.
Yeah, let's think about the value of overcharge, right? We just saw one that was, I think it was the least value you could get minus just overcharging by accident, okay? And now the overcharge value that Classic has defensively here is massive. In fact, could even have attempted a double force field block and kill all those Stalkers if he had been able to get the overcharge off or the force fields there. So, you know, the difference here in terms of decision making for the two players and the little tiny edges that Classic had really push him further ahead. The faster tech, the faster Twilight Council here for Patience. As the Oracle flies across the map, he's made that transition. He's going into the blink now. Pylon is in position, but not completed, unfortunately. This is going to force up a probe pull.
3 kills, overcharge coming out here for Classic. And he will be able to get a decent scout. Doesn't see quite everything that was made by Classic. He's going to have a hard time getting damage done with that Oracle now that Classic knows it's out and about. So, you know, let's see what happens with Patience. The reason why he got so significantly ahead, it was actually really good play out of Patience by, you know, he's prepared for Frost, right? It's his highest priority map pick, so he's going to get it in the best of 3 no matter what. He then goes for the attacks into a Nexus, and then another attack into a Nexus, a fake attack, that pressure play. On this map, we'll see if he wants to stick with that with his blink that he has coming out. Here's the 3rd Nexus coming up. Will he pressure with this blink? Looks like it. Here come the Stalkers. Pylon's already up, and this is just the pylon
more of the same.
The pylon bait. You're going to lose both of your Stalkers.
That makes this pressure a lot stronger.
Yeah, Classic going to be waiting on that Immortal that he just started. And because the Oracle is still alive and he doesn't have it tagged within a hallucination right now, he still has to be wary about that attack from behind from the Oracle. And Patience has so much map control, he easily takes a 3rd base way ahead of Classic.
This is the way that Patience has decided to play this matchup, and I think it's really proactive. It's quite smart. The Observer is actually really good by Classic, though, so he knows these Stalkers are here, so he's not really as concerned as he was previously. Okay. Reveal on those Stalkers and come in here despite having the Observer scout. Only 1 Immortal here, but the barrier will protect it, and now he's outnumbered. This may have been a pretty aggressive blink. He gets, I would say, the worst end of the trade. It could have been much worse, but he gets away.
Yeah, he lost one extra stalker. Not 100%. It was pretty close.
But again, it's all about buying time for the third base. So when you talk about units traded there, maybe it was worse for him. But when you talk about what the advantages gained, absolutely, the economic lead goes to Patience. I want to check. Forge is up for Patience faster too. Hasn't used it yet, as I say it. The words come out of my mouth. He does start the +1.
That's how it always works here,
yeah.
Especially in fast lane. You say something, it happens. Or you say something is not happening, and it happens. And you can see Classic, he desperately wanted to get that third base down, but there's no pylon over here. He's going to be forced into a fight. Oh, a blink forward from Patience. He really wants to take out that Immortal. He's losing a bunch of stalkers.
Guardian Shield helping out a lot here for Classic too. That was a bit haphazard, shall we say.
Yeah, I don't know about that trade.
Yeah.
He lost about 5 stalkers, maybe 6 to take out an Immortal.
It's not a game-losing trade by any means, but probably going to be painful here. Another pylon bait with that same pylon. No blink, though, for Patience to chase. Classic going to go for a very slow Adept Warp in over here to look for some probe kills, perhaps sentry kills. Forces out overcharges. The Shade will go off here to the third base. Probes are actually attacking the Adepts. Classic is going to be so happy with this one.
Yeah.
You're this far ahead in terms of bases, and yet you have to evacuate the base, and you're losing probes there, and the overcharge was forced. Plus, you know that Patience threw away a few of his units in that last fight. They're feeling pretty happy right now, despite having the later third Nexus. Now fully saturated.
I think we are going to kind of even out.
Yeah.
I was really liking Patience's position earlier on when he was putting on the pressure with the Stalkers and the Oracle and got the earlier third base, but I feel like he took a couple of bad trades, and Classic, again, is fighting his way back in a sense. We're going to see Resonating Glaives out of Patience this time. Maybe he wants to make a bigger commitment to Adepts in this game.
Robo Bay coming up. More unusual choice here for Patience. See how he decides to use it. With how much commitment there were to Prisms in the last game, would not even shock me to see Warp Prism speed come out. And things like Observer speed could be useful too, but I'm just talking about the abnormals here. So there, we have seen, especially out of SOS, weird Colossus timings in PvP. Disruptors, the more dominant tech from the Robo Bay, as a Neve fan will tell you. Another Shade in actually gets the good trade. It's just so difficult to kill Adepts with Stalkers because they're light units. Stalkers don't get their damage bonus to them, and Adepts kill probes so quickly. Stargate is coming up here for Classic as he makes the transition to Fleet Beacon tech. And Patience does start the double disruptor immediately. So not going to waste any time on that. As he clears up this annoying pylon, which has cost him so many probes throughout this mid game. Fourth base comes up here. Again, the lead for Patience on that. And a Dark Shrine, the first we've seen this series.
Yeah, very surprising that we haven't seen it earlier in PvP. A pretty common tech that you see in a lot of other series. But there you have it. I'm wondering what Patience is going to do with this Resonating Glaives. Is he just going to make an Adept-based army, or does he want to go for more Adept-based harassment? He has not built a Warp Prism yet. He's really just committing to making a lot of Disruptors at first, because especially if you go for Disruptors, when you have just 2, you're in a bad spot. You need a bit more. Once you get to 4, you're pretty safe, because you can just, go one by one.
Nice blink here to catch some of these Stalkers. This attack is certainly shut down. Even with the Rocks destroyed, funneling through that choke point against Disruptor tech is very terrifying. We'll have the 4 now. As you said, 2's the risky moment. It has double that now. As Classic is just going to make the transition to air to try to kind of get ahead of the Disruptor tech, counter it early on.
But Patience not too far behind. He only has 1 Stargate, I think. Yeah, just 1, but he does have the Fleet Beacon right behind Classic. And so even just that amount of AoE that you can add to your army with the 4 Disruptors, if you can get away with it, it's pretty nice for wiping out a lot of those ground forces, especially in the 200 versus 200 supply fights. It's very hard to micro against that many Disruptors. There's 6 of them now, when you're also trying to micro your other stuff.
Yep. Few Zealots actually, sorry, Adept sneaking in with the Adept count he built earlier.
Get that cannon.
Get that cannon, knock it down. These Zealots going to get it, actually. So, carrier tech, triple carrier production coming in out now for Classic.
If he was just attacking the probes, he would have like 15 kills.
Yeah. Easier said than done with the way the probes prioritize targets. Finally gets shut down here in the main base. But look at this. This is the more significant action over here, where this heavy DPS ground army with the Immortals is just going to hit this Nexus, while the, unfortunately, Disruptors were dealing with a drop in the main base for some reason. Patience kind of failing with his multitasking somewhat there to split his army into 2 places to deal with that attack. So Classic gets probe kills on the main and a free Nexus. Then he has the tech that counters the Disruptors. It's not a direct counter, it's not a hard counter, but Disruptors can't kill the carriers. He's building a healthy carrier count. He has the air upgrades. The +1's finished already. Graviton Catapult's coming out here. And he's got control of the harassment game as well. He's going to shut down these gateways if he gets the unpower off. The Prism does finally go down here. Kills this base again because Patience is sending his Disruptors to defend against, Zealots in the main instead of having this over here. And as you said, no cancel.
I feel like Patience is really struggling with identifying where this game is going to, On Abyssal Reef, he wasn't able to deal with some simple harassment, and his army was totally out of position to defend his very important 7th and 8th gases that he needs for the carrier transition. Classic is so far ahead when it comes to that air tech now, because Patience never really made the transition. He was making a bunch of Immortals, he was making Dark Templar, and he's just using that for Archons.
The Disruptors have given him literally 0 value this game. He committed so much gas to those, which also is why his Archon count is significantly reduced as well. And Classic, yet again, finds another angle here. And look at the minimap. He's like, am I going to get another free Nexus with just 1 Zealot Warp in? Maybe I will. Let's see how Patience deals with it this time. He does have the units set up here. This time he splits them. This time he deals with it. So far 1 for 3 of the defenses here, splitting the units, and now he can hold on to that base. But the transition is, as you said, going to be a difficult one as Classic goes up to 5 Stargates now.
Yeah, 5 carriers versus 0, with really just Stalkers to deal with that. You're not going to be able to blink underneath all the Immortals and the rest of the ground army in Classic to deal with those carriers with only Stalkers.
Definitely a really forward position here, though, for Classic. Not having his entire army together and caught a little bit out on the map. The Phoenixes don't have Anion Pulse Crystals. If they did, which he might eventually get those if he wants to add a few more, and they could maybe find some extra damage on the Mothership, try to snipe that to further win the battle. Ground Army is obviously massively in favor of Patience with his Disruptor tech, but because he has so many, it's going to be difficult to micro in the heat of battle. Make sure that they actually all find their targets. We talk about how it's difficult to micro against Disruptors, but to actually activate them individually to get the maximum amount of value is also very difficult. He's got a nice angle here. He's kind of trying to wedge his way in between the natural and the 3rd, 4th, and 5th bases here. He's going to get this Nexus, as Classic just hasn't quite hit the critical mass for carriers at this moment in time.
He's waiting for +2 too. He's doing kind of the play where you sacrifice a base because there's so much stuff coming together, and right as +2 finishes, he needs to defend his base. Big lifts on the Disruptors.
Gonna go
down
for the
mothership, and there's no stealth for your entire army. There's nothing to deal with the carriers.
Yeah, no anti-air. This is the counter. GG. Classic just felt like in all 3 games, 1 step ahead of Patience, even though he lost the final game, or sorry, the second game because of a somewhat weird attack. When massively behind, he made all the right decisions, and he was definitely the better Pross in this series.
That's an emotional booth there on the right side of the studio, where both Bjorn and Patience, they look so happy, and then they're just so sad. And yeah, I would have to agree with you. I think Classic was definitely the better PvP player there. It was kind of what I was expecting. And that game really identifies why, it really shows rather, why carriers are such a big tech in that matchup, and why people, sometimes they find a way to get there. And Patience was like, no, I'm just not even going to make them.
Well, he identified early on the Disruptor stockpile tactic, and on a map that's huge, you can't really find any window to attack with Disruptors, while Classic is sitting back building the carriers. And this was all made possible because of his 2 Warp Prisms that got constant damage. Yeah. And Patience failed to split his units into defending the third base and defending the attack in the main. So he got like 8 probes in the main base and then got the third base killed at the same time. That happened twice, the second time without a cancel. This gave so much time for him to get that critical mass of carriers. There was a small window of time where he almost died to the attack, but he had enough carriers in the end.
Yeah, so guys, after a short break, we'll get to that winner's match, so stay tuned.